South Korea agreed to give 200,000 tons of fertilizer to the north after 4 days of bilateral talks concluded last week. South Korea also became a sports power in the world. South Korea also has a space program. South Korea also hinted at reducing oil imports from Iran, he added. 205 South Korea and China have genuine reasons to be aggrieved. South Korea and Japan are turning to robots for help. South Korea and Japan have finally agreed on some things. South Korea and Japan once again went head-to-head, and the Korean men's and women's both won the qualifier. South Korea and the rest of the world are very angry at the North. South Korea beat Japan in their third straight penalty shootout. South Korea beat Lebanon 2-0 at home in February. South Korea beat the United Arab Emirates by a score of 4-1. South Korea beats UAE in World Cup qualifier. South Korea became an aging society in 2000. South Korea brushed aside Thailand in the opening match. South Korea came in second place overall in the tournament. South Korea came into antagonism with Japan. South Korea can also achieve a tripartite accord as Ireland did. South Korea can't shake off its notoriety for working hours. South Korea currently has 59 people on death row. South Korea decided to import US beef again. South Korea did not give any prior notice of their plan, they said. South Korea does not need a space program. South Korea elected its first female prime minister. South Korea enters top 30 in world rankings. FIFA. South Korea gets worst sandstorm since 2002. South Korea got really bad grades. South Korea had a low birth rate. South Korea had to beat Switzerland in their final first-round match to go to the round of 16. South Korea has 1,700 pilots altogether. South Korea has a deep traditional culture that goes back for thousands of years. South Korea has a lot of beautiful beaches. South Korea has a lot of beautiful sights. South Korea has a low rate of vandalism compared to other countries. South Korea has adopted the draft system. South Korea has also referred the incident to the UN Security Council. South Korea has an aging population. South Korea has an area of 99,392 square kilometers. South Korea has become a sports powerhouse. South Korea has been counting its population since 1968. South Korea has clearly overstepped its boundaries in implementing it. South Korea has come up with an innovative way of testing for the novel coronavirus. South Korea has created an ambitious space program. South Korea has definitely made its mark on the Middle Kingdom. South Korea has done an about-face in its foreign policy. South Korea has expressed interest in buying UAVs for 4 years. South Korea has faced corruption problems for some time. South Korea has 4 distinct seasons. South Korea has made a name for itself throughout Asia. South Korea has made little progress in attracting foreign professionals. South Korea has only 50 teams at that level. South Korea has said it would fully comply with the UN. South Korea has summoned Japan's ambassador to protest Mr. Koizumi's action. South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the world. South Korea has won the Junior Baseball Championship. South Korea hosted the Asian Games twice. South Korea in particular already has a very low birth rate. South Korea is a country where education means everything. South Korea is a country with a high literacy rate. South Korea is a democratic country, whereas North Korea is a communist country. South Korea is a leader in information and telecommunication technology. South Korea is a technically advanced country. South Korea is also building skyscrapers. South Korea is also excluded from the meetings. South Korea is also joining the war against trans fats. South Korea is changing its elementary school curriculum. South Korea is considered one of the most wired countries in the world. South Korea is definitely the place to be in Asia. South Korea is famous for having exported its babies. South Korea is following in India's footsteps. South Korea is highly interested in exploring space. South Korea is in aid of North Korea. South Korea is in Group C with Australia, India, and Bahrain. C. South Korea is infamous for its overuse of antibiotics. South Korea is known for its hot and humid summers. South Korea is lagging behind other nations when it comes to space research and technology. South Korea is not a third world country, it needs to stand up for itself. South Korea is now more than capable of handling its own security. South Korea is one of the countries trying to help. South Korea is one of the most wired countries in the world. South Korea is pioneering a coronavirus drive-through testing station. South Korea is planning to send someone into space by 2008. South Korea is preparing for a possible collapse of the North Korean regime. South Korea is preparing to get rid of its paper textbooks. South Korea is quietly reducing its carbon emissions while promoting green growth. South Korea is recognized around the globe as one of the most internet-savvy nations. South Korea is saying the same thing. South Korea is still angry at North Korea. South Korea is still in top place in Group B. South Korea is sweating with the rest of the world. South Korea is taking its next big step as a worldwide leader of the information technology industry. South Korea is the 10th largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. South Korea is the 5th country to build a bullet train. South Korea is the most wired country in the world. South Korea is the 3rd largest importer of U.S. beef. South Korea is the world's 2nd biggest coal importer and 3rd biggest oil importer. South Korea is waiting in line to participate in the United States visa waiver program. South Korea is worried about the low birth rate. South Korea largely credits mass testing for its relatively low death ratio among hard-hit areas. South Korea looks to improve on World Cup result. South Korea makes soccer history. South Korea must make sure to follow suit or it could be left out in the cold. South Korea must react strongly to their false assertions. South Korea needs its youth to help support its large aging population. South Korea needs the U.S.S. help now more than ever. South Korea needs to look for young players to follow me. South Korea now has 9 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. South Korea obsessed with education. South Korea persuaded North Korea's recalcitrant leader to engage in talks towards reconciliation. South Korea pioneers coronavirus drive-through testing station. South Korea placed 26th, the same ranking as last year. South Korea plans to become one of the top 4 producers of electric cars. 4. South Korea previously built a national education information system on Linux servers. South Korea proves pandemic response requires more than money. South Korea ranked high on the world's best nations list. South Korea recently banned outdoor rallies at night. South Korea recently made a free trade agreement with the United States. South Korea said it would be impossible to follow suit at the moment, however. South Korea says Japan has not distanced itself from its imperial past, and even glorifies it. South Korea should attack North Korea for what they did. South Korea should focus on job performance and let sleeping dogs lie. South Korea should have a strong space program. South Korea should not have anything to do with a government like that. South Korea should not listen to pessimistic experts who warn that its plan is too ambitious, either. South Korea should still remain one of the top 10 markets for Microsoft. South Korea showed a friendly gesture to North Korea. South Korea shows no sign of waning its response over the North Korean missile tests. South Korea stanched out to talk with North Korea through ministerial talks. South Korea therefore has no other choice but to join the PSI. South Korea took the lead on 2 goals in the first half by Lee Kyun-ho and Park Ji-sung. South Korea tried 3 times to send a rocket into space. South Korea wants to become a leader in robotics. South Korea wants the North to let the worker go. South Korea wants to address the issue in divided defense ministers' conferences. South Korea was angry about the US beef with bones. South Korea was chosen to host the 2018 Winter Games fair and square. South Korea was down 0-1 when Switzerland was given a second goal. South Korea will also introduce a jury system as soon as next year. South Korea will move on once the North apologizes. South Korea will send fertilizer to North Korea for the first time in 5 years, fueling optimism for a thawing of the frozen inter-Korean relations. South Korea won 5 straight games at the qualifiers. South Korea, China, Russia, and Japan have also been calling on North Korea to rejoin the Six-Nation talks. South Korea, however, remained silent over the issue. South Korea, on the other hand, has been known to be more lenient about plagiarism. South Korea, the biggest memory chip company in the world. South Korea, which began on Monday. South Korean artists are coming together to serve elementary, middle, and high school students. South Korean authorities have indicted 5 members of Wang Woo-suk's research team for various offenses related to the case. South Korean baseball has been very popular this year. South Korean cell phones were not affected by the viruses. South Korean children are outpacing our kids in math and science. South Korean children learn English in school. South Korean companies are saying goodbye to English tests. South Korean courts are known to be lenient towards prominent members of the business world. South Korean delegates celebrated wildly and many shed tears of joy. South Korean elementary school students have 10 classes a week. South Korean fans were very angry at Shin for his comments. South Korean female golfers dominated the LPGA. South Korean film Takeoff has surpassed the 6 million viewer mark. South Korean filmmakers have been busy, too. South Korean forces broke through the 38th parallel for the first time during the Korean War. South Korean golfer Ji Eun-hee has won the 2009 US Women's Open. South Korean leaders, however, face pockets of strong domestic pressure to protect certain industries. South Korean men had an average height of 171 centimeters. South Korean men have to serve in the military. South Korean men were placed as the 43rd tallest country in the world. South Korean newspapers and TV channels covered the story, too. South Korean officials said at the time that the first shipment would be made in late May. South Korean parents are notoriously zealous for more education for their children. South Korean people love shopping for luxury goods. South Korean players are known for being very competitive. South Korean police have moved in on a huge encampment where striking bank employees have gathered. South Korean pop star Rain has risen to new levels of fame. South Korean President Kim Dae-jung has reshuffled his cabinet. South Korean presidents usually have older siblings. South Korean protests against United States beef are getting out of hand. South Korean prove pandemic response requires more than money. South Korean researchers discovered 3 species of penguins, seagulls, and plant life in the area. South Korean scientists have a big plan. South Korean sculptor Choi Jong-hwa crafted 3 works for the exhibit. South Korean singer Wi-sung will be making his US debut. South Korean skaters won 7 out of 10 gold medals at the event. South Korean slugger Lee Seung-yeop plays for the Yomiuri Giants in Japan. South Korean soccer player Park Ji-sung scored a goal for Manchester United on March 1. South Korean soccer player Park Ji-sung scored his first goal of the season in the English Premier League. South Korean society is slowly moving towards gender equality, an NTS official said. South Korean soldier killed in Afghanistan. South Korean soldiers were patrolling the border. South Korean students are required to speak English only within the English language villages. South Korean students study English in school. South Korean tech giant LG has made its way into space. South Korean teenagers are using too much bad language. South Korean teenagers had the second worst social skills out of everyone. South Korean teens have poor social skills. South Korean textbooks are changing with the times. South Korean viewers have fallen in love with television dramas from the United States. South Korean women gave birth to roughly 1.18 babies in 2013. South Koreans are crazy about English. South Koreans are desperate to learn English. South Koreans are having few babies. South Koreans are sometimes obsessed with blood types. South Koreans fear backlash after Virginia Tech shooting. South Koreans generally eat in a group. South Koreans have a poor understanding of local historical events, according to a recent poll. South Koreans have been waiting a long time for the introduction of the United States visa waiver program. South Koreans have fallen in love with baseball. South Koreans have fallen in love with Kim Yoon-ae. South Koreans have one of the highest dropout rates in the US. South Koreans have spent trillions of won on learning English as a foreign language over the last several decades. South Koreans love books about Ivy League schools. South Koreans love books about Ivy League schools. South Koreans obsess over money and think it can change their lives. South Koreans often will offer directions to confused foreigners, not presumed kinsmen. South Koreans said they had the most. South Koreans should be very proud of this team. South Koreans to bring kimchi into space. South Koreans to bring kimchi into space. South Koreans to clean up Mount Everest. South Koreans were ashamed upon discovering North Korea had built its dam to reroute water to a power plant. South Koreans were overjoyed by Jeju's entry onto the elite list. South Koreans, however, seem to prefer domestic search engines like Naver.com. South Korea's accomplishment in Germany. South Korea's banks are in a better position than Japan's to lead that growth. South Korea's best tennis player is Lee Hyung-taek. South Korea's confused tipping culture causes stress. South Korea's deputy foreign minister, Chun Young-woo, provided a gloomy assessment of the situation. South Korea's first astronaut has been selected. South Korea's first astronaut will perform tests in space. South Korea's first Islamic school will open next year. South Korea's high-speed KTX train has been experiencing multiple operational problems recently. South Korea's income gap is alarming disproportionate. South Korea's jobless numbers have been released. South Korea's kindergartens will stay open late beginning this March. South Korea's leading golfer Shin Ji-hye has made an encouraging start to 2013. South Korea's leading rhythmic gymnast Sun Yeon-jae has grown wings again in 2013. South Korea's legal age may change soon. South Korea's mandatory military service is set at 21 months. South Korea's national soccer team has a new coach. South Korea's nominal GDP for 2009 stood at $930 billion. South Korea's Olympic football team is ready for battle. South Korea's politicians should stop fighting over the Four River Project, and focus on devising future-oriented follow-up measures including objective research, handling of water pollution, and overhauling brook systems. South Korea's president is relinquishing his title as head of his ruling party. South Korea's record was not good enough to get them into the round of 16. South Korea's relationship with its northern neighbors has long been a rocky one. South Korea's rice market is expected to eventually open completely. South Korea's second largest portal at dom.net. South Korea's space program is very small. South Korea's team in the Under-20 World Cup in Egypt played very well. 2-0. South Korea's top 4 hospitals are located in Seoul. 4. South Korea's unemployment rate held steady in March, indicating employers stayed reluctant to hire more workers despite improving business sentiment. South Korea's will be the 5th one. South Korea's YTN News Network reported that a U.S.